All right, friends, I just got back. It is very late. Please excuse my lack of shaving. And we are going to make this a quick one because I want/need to get to bed. But I have wanted to make this video for a while, and I figured it now would be a good time because it is not one that requires a lot of time. It's a pretty simple idea. There are certain Pokemon that come from events. Then the example we'll be using is Orasphere Raichu because it is the one most germane to the examples I could give in the metagames I'm interested in. I don't know if there's anything equivalent, like in modern generations, like if there's a version of Melmetal that only shows up in a certain Pokeball or something. But yeah, we're talking Orasphere Raikou, just for example's sake, because this is very relevant. So these Pokemon that come in these events, they appear in a Cherish Ball. It's one of the things that delineate this Pokemon as being from that event, besides like the trainer ID or like where you met it and stuff like that. But that's not stuff you see in the actual battle. And now you might know where we're going with this. In the actual battle, when you face an event Pokemon, then it comes in a Cherish Ball. Okay, why does that matter? You can, if you're doing legal hacking, as we used to call it in the Wi-Fi days, then you can put anything in a Cherish Ball just for fun. Put Swampert in a Cherish Ball. Who cares? And in situations like that where it's mostly just an aesthetic thing, and well, I like the way Cherish Balls look, so I'm just gonna put it on every Pokemon because it's awesome. I think it's also the default that Pokemon Action Replayed or Pokestop or something. You have to there's this old program called Pokestop, and if you didn't change the Pokeball, then it would default to Cherish Ball. Anyway, the point of this is that if we're talking like pure legitimate what can be achieved in the game, then it is important if it's more than just an aesthetic thing. Like, for example, in Advance, people want to use shiny Jirachi and Celebi, but they can't because you can't get them or something. I don't know. I think it's a shame because it is just an aesthetic thing. But if it does mean something more than just aesthetic, then obviously you have to take it into consideration. And that is where this problem comes from. Because Orasphere Raikou only comes from an event. This means that every single Orasphere Raikou that has ever existed legitimately comes in a Cherish Ball. There is no other way to get Raikou in a Cherish Ball. Because I made a video a year ago where I said every Raikou in DPP should be shiny. And the reason is when you are not shiny, you tell the opponent, I don't have Orasphere. And that is a major, major distinction to make. You want to throw your T-Tar into this thing or not? But the problem is, as someone pointed out, and this extends beyond just the single case of Orasphere Raikou, is that the opponent will know if it's an event Raikou, which does not just mean Orasphere, but it means a rash nature, it means extreme speed, and something else that I forget that isn't actually important. So you don't even have to have Orasphere and extreme speed. It's just that when the Raikou shows up in a Cherish Ball and shiny, obviously, then the opponent knows it is rash natured and that it can have these moves. So right now, the way we've played the game forever on the simulators is you don't show the Pokeball. You just, it's because it's just an aesthetic thing, right? If you want to throw everything in a Cherish Ball on Wi-Fi, who cares? Same idea here. You don't even, everything is automatically in a Pokeball. It's not really important. But in cases like this, for example, then knowing what kind of Pokeball it's in is very, very relevant. Because obviously it's the difference between rash nature or, any other nature, Orasphere versus non-Orasphere. And it's weird because this literally does not exist in the game we choose to play. And I know we take liberties with like sleep claws and freeze claws and things like that, but this is something entirely different. And what's interesting is that we had Pokeballs on Showdown about 5 years ago, I want to say. And for some reason it was just taken away. Like, I think it was like the aesthetic wasn't implemented, but it was purely an aesthetic thing, I think, at the time. And there was never an explanation given for why it was taken away, but also who cares, right? Because it's just an aesthetic thing. And, then you realize, oh, wait, it's not just an aesthetic thing. That also, shows what because there are other Pokemon that can also be obtained in Cherish Balls, and I'm sure it affects their movesets. I can't think of any, but I'm sure some wonderful people in the comments will provide some. Well, the ones I can think of are the Entei and Suicune, which came from the same event that the Raikou did, and they all have E-Speed. Entei is always adamant it has Flare Blitz. Suicune is always, I don't even know what Suicune is because nobody uses Event Suicune. Malekith did in the Smogon Tour 13 finals, but that was widely deemed to be a bad idea. Nowadays, when people lead Suicune, then they don't use it with the purpose of extreme speed. Yeah, it was a bad idea because he was using it into someone who was using a lot of stall, which that Suicune said is hilariously worthless into. Anyway, not the point. The point I think has kind of been made because I remember in Gen 5 OU, this issue was actually briefly brought up because someone was like, hey, this whole Landorus incarnate thing, it's so broken with sheer force, but it's only broken because we don't know if it's going to be sheer force versus sand force. And there's some sort of Pokeball distinction that shows sheer force Lando versus sand force Lando. Now, that example, it actually didn't matter because nobody was using sand force Lando at all. So that was just a complete non-argument at all. Someone just made up to try and make Lando seem more palatable once you know it's sheer force for sure. Oh, well, once we get the Pokeball implemented on Showdown, or actually it was Pokemon Online at the time, but PO, Showdown, whatever it is. Once we get that implemented, then you'll know what Landers you're facing. That makes it so much easier to deal with. Right now, it's a DPP Salmon situation where you don't know what set is, which was nonsense because everyone knew it was going to be Sheer Force Lando when it came out. That was not the issue. Oh, God, there's so much mystery around this Lando set. The only mystery around those Lando sets were what moves exactly it was going to be running. And even then, not really that much. Anyway, the point being that it was actually raised then, but then since people rightly said, dude, it has nothing to do with not knowing if it's sheer force or sand force. It's always sheer force. So that just never went anywhere. And the Pokeballs were implemented. So yeah, we kind of need the Pokeballs implemented on the simulators because now there's no way to, now even if you run a shiny Raikou, let's say, right? If the shiny Raikou is not in a Cherish Ball, then they know you don't have Orasphere. It's a big deal. Another example, and this is a little more on the specific side for DPPUU, for instance, then you could do something similar where if you have you should always make your Entei shiny as we play it right now without Pokeballs, right? Because then they don't know, is it going to have Flare Blitz or is it going to be Sub Calm Mind Protect Lava Plume? Not that I think this is going to make too much of a difference because the Flare Blitz Entei is generally used in the lead slot and the Sub Calm Mind Protect Entei is used in the non-lead slot generally. But, just for example's sake. But now, as soon as the Entei shows up in the Cherish Ball, then it's adamant, it has Flare Blitz. So, yeah, with Raikou, it's the same thing. You can throw all the shiny Raikous in the world at the opponent, but if it doesn't show up in a Cherish Ball, it is not going to have Orasphere. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole idea, the whole thing. And I wish I remembered more examples. I guess there haven't been that many event. I think Selby gets Nasty Plot through an event. I think Selby in general gets access through events. Or at this point, I don't know. That's just another Gen 4 example. Because I remember that Selby being tied to the Raikou Entei Suicune events. Around the Zoroark movie, I remember. I never saw that one. Yeah, one of the movies I haven't seen. But yeah, so that is basically it. If there are any more modern examples of this, because it is significant, and yeah, the Pokeball, it's generally an aesthetic thing, but for something like this, it does bear competitive relevance, so we should look into it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.